So what happens when you stop living in bad faith? You stop blaming. You stop waiting for circumstances to change. You stop resenting other people. You stop acting like a victim. You admit, I'm choosing this. And if I don't like it, I can choose differently. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Now. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your old response, blame them. Get angry. Let it ruin your mood. Your new response, I'm choosing how I respond. I can choose anger, or I can let it go. Either way, it's my choice. That shift from, they made me angry to, I'm choosing anger, changes everything. You start owning your job, your relationships, your failures, your successes, all of it. Not because you're perfect, but because it's yours. You chose it. Even if you didn't choose the circumstances, you're choosing your response to them. That's ownership. That's authenticity. That's freedom. You become free. Not free from consequences. Not free from difficulty. But free from the cage. Free from the lie that you have no choice. And here's what's interesting. When you admit you're free, you might not change anything. You might stay in the same job, the same relationship, the same city. But now you're choosing it. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And that changes how it feels. You're not trapped. You're present. You're choosing. Sartre. The cage. You built yourself, Sartre's bad faith. You feel trapped. Stuck in a job you hate, a relationship that's run its course, a life that doesn't feel like yours. And you blame circumstances, the economy, your responsibilities, other people's expectations. But Jean-Paul Sartre would tell you something brutal. You're not trapped by circumstances, you're trapped by a cage you built yourself. And you're pretending you have no choice. He called it bad faith. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The problem. Let me show you what bad faith looks like. You hate your job, it drains you. You complain about it every day. But when someone asks why you don't leave, you say, I can't. I have bills. I have responsibilities. I have no choice. But that's not true. You have a choice. You're choosing to stay. You're choosing security over risk, comfort over uncertainty. And instead of owning that choice, you pretend it's not a choice at all. You act like you're trapped, like the cage has no door. That's bad faith. Or this. You're in a relationship that's dead. No passion, no connection, just routine. But you stay. And when someone asks why, you say, it's complicated, we have history, it would hurt them, it would hurt me. I can't just leave. But you can. You're choosing not to. You're choosing familiar misery over uncertain freedom. And instead of admitting that, you pretend you're stuck. You act like a victim of circumstances beyond your control. That's bad faith. Or this one. You want to create something, write, build, make. But you don't. And when someone asks why, you say, I don't have time, I'm not talented enough, it's too late. Other people are better. But none of that is stopping you. You're stopping you. You're choosing safety over vulnerability. You're choosing the comfort of not trying over the risk of failing. And instead of owning that choice, you blame conditions. You act like something external is holding you back. That's bad faith. Sartre would say, you're lying to yourself. And worse, you believe the lie. The mistake. Here's what you're doing wrong. You're treating yourself like an object instead of a subject. Sartre made a distinction. Objects have no freedom. A rock doesn't choose to fall. A chair doesn't choose to be sat on. They are what they are. But you're not an object. You're a subject. A consciousness. A being who chooses. Even when you don't feel like you're choosing, you are. Every moment, you're deciding to stay or go, to speak or stay silent, to act or wait. Sartre wrote, man is condemned to be free. You can't escape freedom. Even refusing to choose is a choice. But bad faith is when you pretend you're not free. When you act like you're an object, determined by circumstances, defined by roles, trapped by conditions. You say, I'm just a job title. I'm just a relationship role. I'm just insert excuse. And in that moment, you turn yourself into an object. You deny your freedom. You build a cage and lock yourself inside. Sartre saw this everywhere. The waiter who overperforms being a waiter. The student who hides behind being a student. The parent who uses their role as an excuse to avoid their own life. These are people in bad faith. They've taken on an identity, a fixed role, and they use it to avoid the terrifying reality. They are free. They can choose. They are responsible. And that's the real issue. Bad faith isn't just about lying to yourself, it's about avoiding responsibility. Because if you admit you're free, you have to admit, this life is your choice. This job, this relationship, this version of yourself. You built the cage, and you can unbuild it. But that's terrifying. Because then you can't blame anyone else. You can't hide behind, I had no choice. You have to own it, all of it. Sartre's framework. Sartre's core idea. Existence precedes essence. You're not born with a fixed nature. You're not destined to be a certain way. You exist first, then you define yourself through your choices. You are what you do, not what you think, not what you intend, not what you wish you were. Your actions define you. Your choices create you. So if you're miserable, it's not because life made you that way. It's because you're choosing actions that create misery. If you feel trapped, it's not because you're trapped. It's because you're choosing to stay. If you're not the person you want to be, it's not because you can't be. It's because you're not choosing the actions that would make you that person. This is brutal, but it's also liberating. Because if you built the cage, you can unbuild it. Sartre also talked about authenticity, the opposite of bad faith. Authenticity is owning your freedom, admitting you're choosing, taking responsibility for who you're becoming. It is saying, I'm staying in this job because I value security over fulfillment right now. Not, I have no choice. It's saying, I'm choosing not to create because I'm afraid of failure. Not, I don't have time. It's saying, I'm in this relationship because I'm scared of being alone. Not, it's complicated. Authenticity doesn't mean you make different choices. It means you stop lying about the choices you're making, and once you stop lying, you can start choosing differently. Why it fails. So why do we stay in bad faith? First, it protects us from anxiety. Freedom is terrifying. If you're free, you're responsible. And if you're responsible, you can't blame anyone else. Bad faith gives you an out. It's not my fault. I had no choice. Sartre called this existential anxiety, the anxiety that comes from realizing you're radically free, that there's no script, no predetermined path, no guarantee you'll choose right. It's easier to pretend you're not free, to act like circumstances choose for you. Second, it gives us an identity. When you're trapped by circumstances, you have a story, a narrative. I'm the person who had to give up their dreams. I'm the person who sacrificed for others. That story gives you an identity, a role, a way to understand yourself. But if you admit you're choosing, you lose that story. You're just you making choices. And that's uncomfortable. Who are you without the story of being trapped? Third, it protects us from failure. If you never try, you never fail. If you never choose, you never choose wrong. Bad faith lets you stay safe. Small. Unchosen. I couldn't start the business. I had responsibilities. I couldn't leave the relationship. It would hurt them. I couldn't create the thing. I wasn't talented enough. As long as you believe these excuses, you never have to risk failing. You never have to face, I tried and it didn't work. But Sartre would say, you're already failing. You're failing to live. You're failing to be authentic. You're failing to take responsibility for your existence. Fourth, society enables it. We're taught to see ourselves as products of our circumstances, victims of our environment, shaped by our past. And there's truth to that. Your circumstances matter. Your history matters. But they don't determine you. They don't remove your freedom. Yet we're constantly given permission to stay in bad faith. You can't help how you were raised. You're just wired that way. It's not your fault. all of which is true in one sense, but false in another. Because even if you didn't choose your starting point, you're choosing your response, every moment. And bad faith is when you pretend you're not. Fifth, it feels like humility. I can't do that. I'm not good enough. It sounds humble, self-aware, realistic. But Sartre would call it cowardice, not because you're not good enough, but because you're hiding behind that excuse. Real humility is, I don't know if I'm good enough, but I'm choosing to try anyway. Bad faith is, I'm not good enough, so I won't try, and I'll pretend that's wisdom. What changes? So what happens when you stop living in bad faith? You stop blaming. You stop waiting for circumstances to change. You stop resenting other people. You stop acting like a victim. You admit, I'm choosing this, and if I don't like it, I can choose differently. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Now. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your old response, blame them. Get angry. Let it ruin your mood. Your new response, I'm choosing how I respond. I can choose anger, or I can let it go. Either way, it's my choice. That shift, from they made me angry to I'm choosing anger, changes everything. You start owning your job, your relationships, your failures, your successes, all of it. Not because you're perfect, but because it's yours. You chose it. Even if you didn't choose the circumstances, you're choosing your response to them. That's ownership. That's authenticity. That's freedom. You become free. Not free from consequences. Not free from difficulty. But free from the cage. Free from the lie that you have no choice. And here's what's interesting. When you admit you're free, you might not change anything. You might stay in the same job, the same relationship, the same city. But now you're choosing it. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And that changes how it feels. You're not trapped. You're present. You're choosing. You stop being a character. You become the author. Sartre lived this. He rejected a Nobel Prize. He refused roles that didn't align with who he was becoming. He chose, constantly, authentically, brutally. And he wrote, "Life has no meaning the moment you lose the illusion of being eternal." He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't pretend freedom was easy. But he lived it anyway, because the alternative, bad faith, was worse than any difficulty. You face the void. This is the scary part. When you admit you're free, you face the void. There's no predetermined purpose, no script, no guarantee. You're standing in front of infinite possibility. And you have to choose. That's terrifying. But it's also exhilarating, because you're not waiting for permission anymore. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're not waiting for circumstances to align. You're choosing, now. And that choice creates who you become. You realize, the cage was always unlocked. You built it. You maintained it. You told yourself stories about why you couldn't leave. But the door was never locked. You were free the entire time. And the moment you admit that, the moment you take responsibility for your freedom, everything changes. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop lying to yourself. Practice. Here's what you do this week. Pick one area where you feel trapped, where you tell yourself, I have no choice. Then finish this sentence honestly. I'm choosing to stay because, not I have to, not I can't, but I'm choosing because. You might be choosing security, or fear of change, or comfort over risk. That's okay. Just admit it. Because once you admit you're choosing, you can start choosing differently. The cage has a door. You built it. You can open it. If this shifted something, leave a comment. What cage did you realize you built yourself? And if you want more philosophy that forces you to look at the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, subscribe. We're breaking down the ideas that change everything. See you in the next one.